that's what we've got here, all 4 of those executives at National Equity Fund. I'll tell you a little bit more about them and what we're going to do in a moment, but our learning objectives really are for us to take advantage of this opportunity to get inside of Joe Hagan's head, if you don't mind, Joe.
Oh, that's right.
And understand how he, as a businessman who's running a large organization, financial services firm, you'll hear more about it in a moment, how he thinks about the role that workplace plays in the business. And Gaylene, of course, is responsible for making things happen, and she does that in partnership with Sue Ann and with Ed.
I've been doing this for about 30 years. My background is I've worked at a state agency, I've worked at a bank for 10 years, I ran Bank One's Community Development Corporation, and in May of 2000, May 15th actually of 2000, I started as President and CEO of National Equity Fund.
Okay, thank you. Gaylene?
Do you get points for this, Gaylene?
Yes. I'm Gaylene Domer, and I have been at NEF for 25 years as their facility person. Started out actually as, I cleaned the restrooms, I think. And before Joe got there, I had 16, I reported to 16 different people. So it shows you what facilities, and many of you know what that means, because they never know what to do with us. They're not sure what we do. Joe wasn't either. So.
At NEF now for 14 years. That's hard to believe how fast that goes. But I'm banking background. I was in a bank for 25 years, and that's how I originally knew Joe. Is we worked at the same bank together, and it's really the reason why I ended up at NEF. So. Good.
I'm the CIO of the National Equity Fund. I work with you guys all the time. I work with Gaylene, and it's really fun. I know you guys probably have a lot of questions of how the CIO actually works with the facilities guys, and it does work. We do like you guys. We're not all evil, and we actually do talk, which is usually what you don't get from IT guys.
A bit more about the business itself.
Yeah, National Equity Fund is basically, we're in the business of building affordable housing. And what we have is the federal government has a special tax credit for investors to take advantage of if we build apartments or just rental units all across the United States. So basically our job is to go out and find investors to invest with us, and then we go out and find those developers that have those credits. So we're in a buy-sell boat. We buy from the developer and sell it to investors.
All right. We were in horrible office space. It was an old HUD office space, and I think we have a floor, there it is. And it was a horseshoe. We were on 2 floors, and I spent all my time moving people around because the managers at the time would, when someone new came on, they wanted to make sure they had 3 offices, if Judy had 1 office, or if Mary had windows. And we spent our time in meetings making sure that the person that was coming in had enough windows, but they didn't have more than the manager had. And we spent a lot of our time moving people around, and sometimes when a new person would come, I'd have to move 10 people because they all had to have, and the leader of the company would support that, and I even had to move doors. It was ridiculous. And so they didn't know what to do with me, and they sent me out because I said our lease is coming up in like 2 to 3 years, and I've got to start looking. And so the woman in charge just sent me out, and I've seen every office in Chicago, every building. So if anybody wants an office in Chicago, I can tell you where to go. But they didn't. They just got rid of me and thought I would go away. And then Joe came.
Joe arrived. And Joe, what did you discover? What did you find?
Well, Gaylene didn't go away, that's for sure. Just to give you a background, at Bank One, I used to invest with NEF, and I'd go up and visit them at their offices, and
He said they're going to move. Don't do that, Casey.
I was getting around.
Very important to talk to IT.
I was getting around to that.
hold on, you don't understand. She's making it a lot simpler than it was. My vision of an office was to look like the office I had at Bank One. That'd be a normal bank office. It would look nice. It would look pretty. It would look professional. It would look sophisticated. I wasn't quite ready when she showed me this wacko furniture to go ahead and do this. And what it wasn't right then that I said, yeah, let's do it. I just said, and I kept thinking about it, and she kept, but Gaylene would come literally every day and try to convince me to do this. Sue Ann, you were a part of this. What was?
Yeah, I'm interested, Sue Ann, very much in what your perspective, if you can go back in time to that.
Well, why don't you talk a little about NEF and the issues we had when we started?
Well, we had lots of issues at many levels. I mean, when I first came into it, maybe 3 months after Joe started, then I started at the company. And when I walked in, it was like, ooh, I mean, it almost made your skin crawl. It's like dirty gray on gray is what I always called our office there. And the whole, but it wasn't just the office setting, it was a mentality that followed through to that. I mean, that's what we came across as a company too. So it was just, people were locked up in their offices, you'd go down the hall and it looked like, over exaggeration, but the prison doors were shut because, you know, at least in prison there's bars so you can see people. All the doors were shut, some of them were locked, and it's like, where are we? You know, so the whole culture was very closed, shut down. We were on 2 different floors, so it was really, it was really something to try to overcome at many levels. Is the main thing.
I'm a walk around kind of guy at work. I like to walk around, see what's happening. When I was at NEF, I remember walking around, and one day, I thought I'd been through the whole office when I opened up this door, and here's this guy over there working, and I'm thinking, what is your job? What is your name? And I swear, I think his job was to play poker all day. But it just gives you a sense of the nooks and crannies. The culture at NEF that time was really depressing. Most people wanted to leave. They didn't want to stay. They wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. And again, I think most people spend time on the computer looking for other jobs.
You know, just to interject, I was in IT and I was developing a brand new software system. And Joe Hagan was the president for 2 months and he didn't know I worked there. And because we were in offices, so no one really walked around and saw each other and knew what we did. And he was overwhelmed with other issues. But one of the things, I actually had to make a presentation to him to show him what the new software was. And he was like, oh my God, why aren't we doing this? You know, this is what we should be doing. And I'm like, well, no one knows this because we're all in silos. And I was just kind of venturing back to today going, that's so different. I don't think that way anymore. They know exactly what we're doing.
Anyway, after we went to see the furniture, and then we found out that it was going to be more than we really wanted to spend, and we were having trouble, and he was up to his eyeballs with all the mess in, was having to fire people and get them out the door, and then we finally told Ed, and he was pulling his hair out, we can't do this, what are you talking about? And so what we decided to do was, we went ahead and Joe said, let's just do it. He's the kind of boss that is really easy to work for because he lets you do your job. He said, what do you need from me? And I said, well, if you would just tell me how much I can spend, and we did only go $9 over budget. If you would just tell me what I have to spend, and then get out of my way, don't make me work with a committee, and I'll get it done for you. And he said, all right, he said, are you putting your job on the line? I said, yes, I put my job on the line. He said, well, you have 3 people, and it's interesting that 14 years ago when we made this move, it was Sue Ann, Ed, and another one of our asset vice presidents that couldn't come today that helped us. And so Joe would not let us have committees. He said, you're not sitting in rooms. You're not going to talk about this and any of you that heard the lunch yesterday, the speaker, he said, do it. It was basically get it done, and that's what we did. And then, do you want to talk about how you've been laid by see it?
Well, you know, NEF used to run by consensus. Everything we did back in 2000, everybody wanted to have a say, and everybody wanted to make this issue. We're going to completely change how they're going to work. And I needed to show them what I wanted first. I wanted them to see what I wanted so that we can build upon that and hopefully get to where we are today.
And you know what he did to me? Halfway through the move, I'm like that, pulling my hair out. Everything's late. We're pushing, trying to get the construction done. And he comes into me and he goes, I have one question for you. And he hadn't bothered me up to this point, and I thought, and he kind of was real stern about it. And I said, what? And he said, do I not have an office? And I looked at him and I go, no. He said, I'm kidding. I almost had a heart.
Well, part of it when we started opening up and letting people know what was happening, we said we're going to this new type of furniture. It will all be open, including me. I'm going to have the same kind of furniture you have. So it was difficult for anyone to complain. If you look at the various groups that were really worried about it, the worst were the attorneys. We had the staff of 6 attorneys, and they all felt I have confidentiality issues, and I'm not going to be able to deal with this. I said, you don't walk into the conference room if you have confidentiality issues. And so it was an interesting time. For me, it was an interesting time because I was out trying to renegotiate loans to be able to get money back in NEF so we could operate. And from my perspective, this was either do or die. Either this worked and NEF got back up and started running and making money, or I'm out the door, I'm fired. So, but I knew I couldn't make the change culturally without getting us out of that office. And what was most interesting to me is that Gaylene took it one step further from making it look like moving back into a bank office to something that was different and more dynamic. And I want to tell you about the story about us when we went to see Herman Miller. We went to their place in Michigan, not that far away.
Where nobody talked to each other, to an open environment where people could collaborate much more frequently. But you also said a moment ago that it was a consensus-driven company. And it sounds like you implemented this somewhat, I hate to use the word autocratically.
Yeah, it is. It was. We had to change
Talk more about that.
We had to change how we operated. Everybody wanted to be in every meeting to talk about everything at NEF. And what was it, sort of like a hierarchy, you know, and Ed probably could talk about this. If we had to make a decision, all of a sudden there's like 15 people in there and they're going to all have their say. And you can't run a company like that. You've got to have leadership. And you have to say, here's what we're going to do. You need to listen, but which basically at the end of the day, you have to lead. And there was no leadership going on at NEF when I came there. And there was a lot of resistance when someone would come in and I need to do this and said, no, you can't do that. And you go, well, let me go back and talk to my people, come back with another idea. I'm thinking, well, that's not how you run a company. So what we were trying to do at this particular time, what I hope with the change in the office would also change the culture and to give people a sense of how I was going to lead. So that was one of the key elements.
Let me just.
More than anything we're doing. And one of the biggest things for him is I never really talked to him about the move, or move.
Right.
And so he calls me up one day, he says, Joe, I understand that you're going to have a pool table and a waterfall in your new office. Is that true? I go, Michael, did you know that we actually have a sauna too? What? We didn't have a sauna, but I just wanted to throw him in. But it just gives you a sense of the environment we work in.
Kind of interesting to look at these pictures and think back when we first moved, because one of the things that actually has changed, and one thing I kind of like to point out is, when we moved, there was no such thing as Wi-Fi. Can you imagine? There was no Wi-Fi. So this space has actually, if you look at it, it has ports on the corner, so you could plug in your laptop or your computer, and not many people even had laptops back then, into a port so you can get access to the internet or to our network. This space has changed so much on how it's used from in the last 5 years because of the internet and because of Wi-Fi and because now everybody's just running around with laptops. It's kind of like the precursor to why we're moving again. But the move was actually quite interesting for me. I was in IT. Back then, one of the great things was, basically you had an internal network. It was pretty simplistic. But there's a great story behind this. So I was pretty young back then.
You're still young.
And I didn't really know much about moving. I've never moved a company before. And one of the things, you try to plan for everything. And one thing I've learned is no matter how much planning you do, plan for the unexpected, because that's what's going to happen. So what we did was we moved over a weekend in essence. 3 days. We had 3 days to close an office and move a new office. And we were all part of this convoluted NPLS network, and to you guys, that's basically a local WAN with our parent company because they used to control everything. So we couldn't have the wiring set up over at the new office until we turned off at the old office. They couldn't figure it out in New York, so we had to kind of say, okay, we're going to turn off at this hour and then turn on at that other hour. Well, that hour came, no internet. The next day, I'm like, well, I still have another day, so that's okay. The next day comes, no internet. Sir, we can't get it to you. I mean, we're on the phone. And I swear to you, I'll never forget this. And Gaylene always laughs about this. It was midnight, the day before we were supposed to go in. And I get a call. I had one of those big flip phones, And I get a call, and they're like, hey, I'm in the office if you want. And this is for the guy from AT&T. I can hook you up. And I'm like, right now? And he's like, yeah, right now. I'm like running to find Gaylene, to find the one key to get us in. And, the guy got us in, we got the internet going. I you know, and everything was, you know, okay for me at that time, but I'll never forget that, you know, every time we go into these meetings for the new move, I always think about, you know what, we're gonna plan all this stuff, and I guarantee something really out of the ordinary is gonna happen that we're not gonna have planned for, but we'll solve it, you know, it's totally solvable.
In just a moment, and talk about the move that they're about to make, which is being done very differently and will produce a very different kind of feel for the company. That's, for me, part of what makes this a really interesting story.
What I demanded was, when everybody moved in, I wanted everything to be working, because this was going to be the new NEF. And Ed knew that. It was extremely important that people could turn on their computer and they could be like they were there. The other thing was that I wanted everybody who moved to get rid of their boxes within 2 days. That is something that was unheard of at the old NEF. And I can remember the day, because it was the day after Labor Day, and I remember being there in the morning greeting everybody. It was the first time they saw the office. We didn't want to tell them where their place was. We didn't want to walk around to see your new office. And it was transformational in a way. People got excited. They really loved it. You know, we had 2 floors before, and people were running into people and saying, "Who are you?" "Oh, I worked on the 6th floor." "Oh, I never knew who you were. I didn't know you worked at NEF." And so we started seeing that. The other transformational thing, we started seeing literally within weeks, people would bring their family up to take a look at the office. And what that is, it was an interesting change, how people wanted to, you know, they felt different about NEF now. And it was huge. And it was, the other thing is recruitment. And we needed young people. You know, we have to, you know, we have these huge, complicated calculations for returns and all these other things. And we needed the young bucks to come in and know how to do those Excel spreadsheets really well. And they would walk in and they'd say, "I want to work here. This looks like a cool place to work." So it was a huge impact for me.
Yeah, it was. I mean, our morale, our turnover was very high, as you could probably see in the old place. But coming here was just, it was a huge transformation at many levels. People were happy, as Joe said, to come to work. I mean, even people that just came in to visit would inquire, "How do you work here?" I mean, it was night and day difference as far as the attitude of everyone. Our visitors, our employees, anybody that just came into the office. And to walk in and see that we had a pool table, and people were just amazed. I mean, it was unheard of at that point in time. But I think what was really huge for all of us was the communication level. It changed immediately. I mean, some people, it didn't work for them. It still didn't work for them, and they eventually left. It is what it is. Not everybody will go with change, and some didn't, but most did. When they got used to talking a little bit lighter, some people.
Except
actually.
Ed.
Except Ed still likes to talk really loud. So you just get used to it. It's just a new environment that you have to adapt to. But it's really cool the way people now that, as you said, we didn't even know they worked there, they collaborate together now. I mean, you over here, you do your work, but you're hearing conversations that you would normally have the advantage of hearing, and then you can interject into something that makes their life easier. It's not a matter of eavesdropping, as people would think. It's like, "Oh, but we've already done that, and here's what you can do," and blah, 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 and all of a sudden, their work got much easier. So our level of communication and cooperation within the company was a complete 180. It was great.
Everybody owned the windows. You know, that was huge difference. The light would come in. It wasn't blocked by people in hardware offices that had, you know, so that was just a completely different.
And clearly, it's what some of your goals are for the next round.
Our lease is up, and we are moving in August. And now what we're doing, people are nervous, they love the space, they love the colors, they love the pool table, they're afraid we're taking that away from them. And so what we've assured them, and we've had Jim come in, and we've had meetings with them, and we have given the project a name, and I think that's important, and I think, Linda, you might have said that in your presentation. You give your project a name, and we've called this Project Change. And I know Diane, that many of you know, Coles she did Scan Health's move, and they called it the Awesome Project. So I think it's important because then the employees tend to own it. And the change for us means creating a new, modern workspace for NEF. The age is, we're talking about the health issues, and Sue talked about that the other day. And this work from home program that Joe has, we've never done that before. And so at the same time we're doing a move, we're also going to do the work from home program. And Sue can talk about that in just a minute. And the A is architecturally unique and cutting edge. And the N is for new way to work, a new way to look, a new way to think, and new innovation. That's what Joe is always pushing us, and he's a visionary, and he's always looking down the road when we're back here, well, we got this fixed. And he's like, no, you can make it better. You can always make it better. So that's what the N stands for. The G is generational demographic motivator. Now, Jim taught me that big long word. Doesn't that sound great? But what that is you got to think about the 5 generations that you have in your office. Or most, what we do, and most of you probably do too, and you don't even realize it. And in the next 3 or 4 years, there's going to be this other whole group coming in. We don't even know what their name is going to be. But those young people are coming in there, and we need them in the company because they're going to start taking over for us. But we got to make sure they can talk because, you know, they're like this all the time. And they don't want to sit in meetings, and they don't want to talk to people. They want, tell me what I'm supposed to do and let me go do it. So that's what we're looking at there. And then the E is environmentally conscious. And be more sustainable office space to help, you know, save the planet. So we keep putting that out there in all the information we send out, and our architects have helped us. They've listened to the story, and our new space is going to call NEF's Main Street USA. And so Joe is going to be sitting in the New York area. We have offices all over the country. Suanne's going to be in California.
I like New York.
Oh, Joe, please stop. And then and Ed is going to be back with me again, so we have IT and facilities together. But I think that's what's important. It's kind of a thread that runs through all of the IFMA, you know, because Linda said it, Sue talked about the health issues, and so those are the kinds of changes we're going to make. So employees are kind of excited, but they're really more excited about the work from home program. Sue, do you want to just kind of talk about that?
Sure. We've been in conversations with Jim for some time, and Diane and her group was instrumental in helping us figure out how to structure this, seeing how it worked, helping us with pitfalls that, you know, we might run across.
For those of you who don't know her, that's Diane Coles-Levine at Scan Health. She was on the program yesterday. She's an active member of corporate safety.
Right. That was very useful. But we didn't work from home before. I mean, some people had asked to do it, and you know, everybody says, oh, Suanne put the squash on that.
Yeah, you were really against it.
He likes to say, no, let's clarify. It's not that I was against it. I was against handpicking those that didn't it. Either we had a program or we didn't. That was my issue. If we work from home, that's fine. It really wasn't true. But anyway, so now this really helped us get a structure on what would work. You know, it's not an entitlement, again, that people would just automatically be able to work from home. It's 3 criteria mainly. It's really about their job, the way they've handled themselves. You know, if they're on probation, clearly they're not going to work from home. And, you know, if their manager was cool with it, and if they had a place at home that they could actually work from that would fit the criteria. So there's a set, you know, means for this to happen and to make it successful, and then what the outcomes are going to be for it. So we started with the pilot program in August of last year, and we had a handful of people sign up. We made each senior management person assign 1 person as a test pilot program. So we had 10, 12 people go out the first time. So now we've just opened up another round of it. So now we've got about 40 people out right now in our Chicago office. And there's about 85 people in our Chicago office. So that's significant.